Today we're going to be doing injectors and O-rings. I got an old set of injectors that we're going to be putting some Alliant O-rings on and throwing in this truck because the injectors I put in 6 months ago need to go back for warranty. We're going to start out by disconnecting the negative battery cable on both batteries and getting them covered so they don't touch anything or ground out while we're doing this. Next, we're going to pull our air filter out and our piping, and then the charge pipes for the turbo. These should all be 8mm clamps. These are going to be 11mm clamps. So the air filter's removed, its pipe, this pipe. We've got this pipe loosened already on both ends. We're going to remove this sensor out of the way so we don't put any tension on these wires. The sensor is a 10mm, and then we'll just find a nice place to tuck it out of the way so it's not just dangling there while we're doing these injectors. Next, you're going to reach down here, pop your hoses off of this, pull it off the bolts, and then there's one more right here. Put those aside. Now you have access to this valve cover. And then we need to remove this. We're gonna reach back here, pull this guy off of that, get it out of the way for now. Pull the green one out of here, and then this is an 8mm, this is an 8mm, this is an 8mm. You might have two of these holding this whole assembly on. I only have one. And then if you reach underneath it, sorry about the shaky, if you reach underneath it, you should have two hose clamps right here as well. Both 8mm you need to loosen. And then this whole assembly will come off and you should have access to this whole valve cover as well. Next, we're gonna pull this off. It's a 10mm. You just back it all the way out and this whole assembly will come with it. We're gonna leave the CCV attached because the O-rings underneath it are non-serviceable, so I don't want to remove it. Instead, we're gonna fit an opened end ratchet on the back end and remove the valve cover bolts that way. Now that that is out of the way, we can pull this valve cover bolt and this valve cover bolt in here so we can move this mounting bracket. All the valve cover bolts all the way around are 13mm. There you go, 13mm. And most of them are pretty easy to get to, besides these two over here, the one back there, and the one on the end of the firewall on the passenger side valve cover as well. But I'll show you exactly how I get to them. If you stick a flathead in here and push this down, you can slide this whole mounting bracket off of this plug. Let's see if I can pull this off one-handed. There we go. And then it comes off. Your plug can be moved out of the way, and now we can see our 13mm back here that we can put a wrench on and not have to, if I can put the wrench on it, oh my, that we can put a wrench on and not have to pull this off. And actually, I think you can reach this one with the socket. So this should be the only one that you have to pull off with this wrench. Now, while we're on the topic of hard bolts, I almost forgot, this back valve cover bolt is the pain for everybody. I am able to just fit a regular deep socket 13mm on my ratchet down in there and break it loose, and then I stick my fingers back there and work it the rest of the way out. But I've also had to put a swivel socket on this setup before to make that bolt work. So if you cannot get to it with just a deep socket, go get a swivel socket, try it out then. it'll make it a little bit easier. Okay, we have removed every bolt but one, because I want to hold this valve cover in place and make sure I'm not dropping any dirt down in there while we go over to the passenger side and work on getting it out as well. So apparently I always get my sides mixed up on which side's the hard side taking these valve covers off. You can actually reach back here fairly easy and get to this rear bolt. It's got a lot more room back there versus the driver's side. You're just gonna wanna go through and pull every single one of these valve cover bolts as well, other than one, just so you can hold the valve cover on for now before we decide what we're doing next. And this one is holding the dipstick in place. It's gonna be a 13mm nut on top of a stud as well. So once you take it off, this is gonna be able to free float, and then you're gonna wanna pull the stud as well. Reach all of them. These two on the passenger side are the hard ones now. You're gonna have to go up through the wheel well with that same 13mm open end wrench and get those. We can show you that right now. Let's grab our 13mm. If you move this and we go up through our wheel well, you can see those guys right there. You're just going to slide your open wrench right here and make sure we're pulling the right way. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. And we're going to go, boom. I dropped it, but that guy's loose now. That one's a little bit harder to reach, but once you get them loose, you can kind of just reach your fingers up in there and loosen them anyway. They're only 8 foot-pounds. Little tip, a ratcheting wrench after you break these bolts loose will make removing them so much easier. Now that the hardest two are out, you can just take your actual ratchet, focus on getting the rest of the valve cover bolts out but one, and then we'll be back. Remember, there is one more on the back side of this valve cover, but it is easier to reach than that one. Now that all the bolts are out but one, you're gonna wanna press down on this clip and pull out your plug, set it to the side, and then you can remove the last bolt. Get the valve cover out of there and remove the gasket as well. Let's see. Okay, put these guys off to the side, and I don't think I'm gonna try and wrestle this valve cover off of here with one hand. I might mess something up and rip a wire or something, but after you get all the bolts removed, remove that plug, this valve cover should be free to just lift up and out of here. You might have to snake it out a little bit. Be careful. Now it's a little bit of a tight fit, so I took a pipe wrench and busted loose, and then this guy just comes out, and we should have just a bit more room to be able to slide our valve cover up and out of here. Now you're going to want to disconnect your injectors and your glow plugs from the valve cover gasket. This white wire goes to the glow plugs. This one with the clip goes on the injector. It's fairly simple. I'll show you on the back one. You reach back here, and I just stick my finger on that white wire and pluck up on it, and it'll pull it off the glow plug. And then the injector has the clip. You push back on the clip and push it out of the injector. Now this valve cover harness is completely disconnected and free, and we can remove it. I'm not gonna pull it out on camera like I said last time because I don't want to damage anything on it especially, but we want to have it out of the way before we pry these injectors out because we don't want to put any pressure on them and ruin them. Now I'm gonna repeat the process on the other side and get these injectors ready to be pulled as well. This next step is really important, so pay attention because you don't want to strip these out. This is your high pressure oil rail that feeds your injectors, and we're going to want to drain it before pulling our injectors out so we don't drop a bunch of oil inside the cylinders. They're in there pretty good, so you really need a 1 1/8, oh, my apologies, 1/8 Allen key to break them loose. I'll kind of give you an idea on how tight it is on this one. I've already broken that one to make sure that this was it, because I really didn't want to strip it out in front of you. But just to give you an idea on how much pressure is behind it. Let's see if I can, oh yeah, there it goes. So you really want to make sure that you have a 1/8 Allen key, because you have to put enough pressure behind those to where you will strip them. Pretty sure I stripped the other ones the last time that I did this, so I have 2 brand new ones that are going to go into it this time. We are on our passenger side now. I've already got that back plug removed. It was really stripped out like I thought, so I'm really glad I got the new plugs in. We're going to go ahead and remove this front one, just like we did last time. Oh yeah, this one was a pain to get in there too, like I said, stripped out. So we'll get it pulled. Make sure not to drop it inside the heads. Now is not the time that you want to remove heads, but as soon as you get it out of the way, reach back there, and we are now dripping oil. So we're just gonna let both sides of this engine drip into the heads for a while and down into the oil pan, and then we'll come out and get a start on removing these injectors. Our next step is to remove the injector oil deflectors. They're a 5mm Allen head, and then underneath there's a 5/16 hold down bolt. You want to remove both from all 8 injectors, and then after that's done, we'll be ready to pop these injectors from their seats. Now that we've got all of our oil deflectors pulled and our hold down bolts pulled on all 8 injectors, we're ready to pull these out. As you can see, they're pretty loose down there. And once you get them loose, you can get it popped up and over that top bolt. You want to make sure that you're holding it up, and you can pop it up like that. And then you'll stick a screwdriver underneath this part and pry against it right here. I'll try to get a video to show you, but I need 2 hands to do it, so I'm gonna have to figure out a way to shove you guys in here somewhere and hold you up in a good position to see. But that's pretty much all there is to it. Push that hold down plate upwards, pull it over the top of the bolt, and then we're gonna pry it up from the top. This is the only place you need to pry from, and you will pull that injector out every time. Okay, I've got you guys in a good spot now. Let me see if I can show you. We're gonna press up on this, pull it up, and then we'll put our pry bar right underneath it. You want to make sure the injector is the only part you're pulling up from. Just give it a good pry. Yep, right there. Don't let the oil drip inside the cylinder too long. Let's see if we can go 2 for 2 real quick. We're gonna press the plate up, hold it up and over that bolt, press our pry bar on the injector, and pop it right out. Don't let the oil drip inside there. Good job, guys. Now that we've got 2 of them out, you're gonna wanna go ahead and repeat the process on the last 6, these 2, and then the 4 passenger side. And then our next step in the process will be pulling these glow plugs out. 1, because they're a lot easier to reach with the injectors out of place, and 2, because once we put the new injectors in, we're gonna wanna evacuate any oil that went into that cylinder out through this glow plug hole, and I'll show you how to do that later on. We've got all 8 injectors out. Our next step is to pull glow plugs. It is a 10mm deep socket with an extension. You can drop it down onto the glow plug and break it loose. And then you want to twist it out as far as you can without going too far, because if you go too far, this socket is going to pin itself against the rocker arm and not be able to come out. So after you loosen it up quite some, you're going to want to reach in, loosen it the rest of the way by hand. And I've already pulled this one out, but I wanted to put it back in and show you guys just how it went. Loosen it the rest of the way by hand, pull it out of the cylinder, and it's just going to be completely covered in oil when you pull it out of the cylinder. So hurry up, get it over the truck so you're not making a mess. Go clean them up and put them up in a safe space if you're going to reuse them. If not, throw them away and grab some new ones. Here we go. I've got a second one loosened up, and this is what they're going to come out looking like. All covered in oil and a mess, just dripping. Go ahead and remove the remaining glow plugs, and then our next step is going to be cleaning out the inside of these cylinders and getting a good look, making sure that we don't need to replace any cups or anything. Okay, now we've got the injectors pulled, glow plugs pulled, and cylinders clean as best as we can go. We are ready to put new injectors in. Our next step before installing injectors is going to be installing these high pressure oil rail plugs. You want them in before you install injectors because it's an easy step to forget. And if you put the valve covers on and go to start the truck up, you will not build high pressure oil. So I like to turn it till it stops with the long end out, and then take the short end, plug it in there, and just give it an extra little crank just to make sure it's seated. And go ahead and place all four. Okay, our next step is going to be installing the injectors. You're going to want to take a little bit of oil and just douse the O-rings really well. And go ahead and drop it in that injector hole. Now there's two ways to do this. Way one that I've seen is you reach down and, just like when removing, hold that hold down plate up and over the bolt, and then give it a little tap with your hand just to get the seat started. And then using a 5/8 wrench, you can stick the open box end inside the bottom end of the hold down plate and use it to force the injector down. But I find this method a little bit harder than just taking a rubber mallet. And I think if you oil up that injector enough, you just kind of rubber mallet with sand in it and slowly tap that injector down into place. Okay, and that's completely seated. I can take it like this. If you look behind the injector, that bolt underneath the connection that we did not remove is sitting at the top of the hold down plate. The bottom of the hold down plate is sitting flush again, so I know that we're seated in here. You can give it a few more taps just to be safe, but I'm happy with that. I'll go ahead and give you one more demonstration. Like I said, take the injector, dip your finger in some oil, get those O-rings really well. Now another tidbit is don't use a regular hammer. You don't want to damage these solenoids. Use a mallet with sand in it, a dead blow hammer, and just be gentle with it. You don't need to hit it super hard. Make sure to keep that top hold down plate pressed up like when we were removing it, and just tap it in. Slowly and smoothly, and she's in. Then we can take, what did I do with it? Our injector hold down bolts and set them in place. You want to run them in by hand to make sure you're not cross-threading anything. I like to just run them all the way in by hand. And then you can torque them down to 10 foot-pounds. It's 120 inch-pounds, but if you work that down, it works out to be 10 foot-pounds. Let's get a better angle on this. Again, 10 foot-pounds. Now, we can put on our oil diverters. This end goes towards the injector. This end points back down into the head. Make sure you get those started by hand as well. You don't want to cross thread anything on these injectors, especially after all this hard work. Now, after you have those ran all the way in, what I like to do, because I don't have a socket that will fit my torque wrench, is just snug these up by hand. You want to twist them until they just stop turning. Give it just a little bit more force. Don't go too hard. You don't want to snap them. The correct measurement is 9 foot-pounds, but like I said, I don't have a socket that will fit these 5mm Allen heads. So we'll just snug them down. And I'm sure that's about 9 foot-pounds anyway. Now, we're gonna show you guys how to evacuate those cylinders. We've left the glow plugs out so we can just throw the valve covers on top of here and give the engine a few cranks, get all the oil out from inside those cylinders, and prevent a hydrolock situation. Now that the injectors are torqued to spec, we're gonna evacuate these cylinders. We've left the glow plugs out and put the valve covers on with one bolt holding them onto the head. So when we spin this engine over, it's just gonna shoot all the oil out of those glow plug cylinders and into the valve cover, back down into the oil pan. So if you come over to this passenger side, there is a wire coming up right here, and it connects right here. You're gonna pinch this connection and disconnect this wire. It is a starter wire. You're gonna wanna make sure that both your negative terminals are back on your batteries again for this step. And then you're gonna touch this starter wire to this positive terminal 5 times, 5 seconds long. So you're gonna hit it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 5 seconds, and I'll show you what this looks like. Now do that 5 times over, and what that is doing is evacuating the cylinders of all the oil and also building H-pop pressure. You're gonna want this for when we go to try to start the truck later. Go ahead and drop your glow plugs in place, torque them to 14 foot-pounds each, drop your valve cover gasket on, put your clip onto your injector, drop the wire down onto your glow plugs, and then reach over and plug your UVCH cord back in. There we go. And now we are all ready to put our valve covers back on. Now that you've got your valve covers back on, you can go ahead and torque each bolt down to 8 foot-pounds, and then finish putting the rest of the truck back together just how we took it apart. And once you've done that, we can come back and get her started. Now that everything's all put back together, we're gonna go ahead and get inside the truck. And we're just gonna stick our key in there. And don't turn it on just yet. Sorry about that. We're just gonna let the fuel system prime for a little bit. Give it about 30 seconds. And then after you do that, here and let it idle for the next hour, and then I'm gonna go take it on the freeway and drive it like I stole it, get
She's been idling for about 45 minutes now and sounds so much better. We're gonna get ready to take her on a drive here soon.